Oh, hey there, and welcome to Teaching Tuesday. If you didn't recognize that, that's Hank Mobley's solo on Dig Dis from the classic Soul Station album recorded on the Blue Note label in 1960, featuring Wynton Kelly on piano, Art Blakey on drums, Paul Chambers on bass, and of course the great Hank Mobley on the tenor saxophone. This is one of my favorite solos to dissect and to go over with students because it so beautifully outlines bebop, post-bebop language in a really clear and deliberate way. We did have a blues etude a little while ago, but I wanted to just kind of go straight to the source here, so you know that I'm not lying to you and that the pros really do the things that I'm talking about. So, the song is a B-flat blues. The head is actually like a slightly varied minor blues, but once it gets into the blowing, it's just a straight B-flat blues. Without any further ado, let's kind of get into what's going on here. We're just going to be talking about the first two choruses that I played. He goes on for another 10 choruses or something, but there's a lot of information just in these two choruses, and I'm a big proponent of kind of sucking a lot out of a lot of information out of some very small bits of music. So without any further ado, so we have the first lick is just a very classic B-flat blues lick. Seen in a lot of music, blues, you might see B.B. King play it or whatever. It goes back to, blues and was co-opted by the beboppers. So we have that lick, and then we got, sort of like an F minor-y thing. Or we're certainly emphasizing this minor seventh, so the A flat, the seventh of B flat. And what we're kind of doing here in these two bars is we're kind of going, or the very classic kind of blues theme that you'll hear. And I'll show you how that happens. So we're hitting that A flat. Then we got, I'm playing it in a different position over here, but it's the same notes. We got, okay, so we have the major third of E flat, and then he's sliding to make it a little, hipper, and that's the minor third of E flat. So this is the 4 chord we're talking about. So we have kind of something like that, or that could be a diminished. But yeah, so we have that little kind of cool melodic line there. Then we have the bebop scale, straight down the bebop scale, and I've talked to you guys about this before. But we're doing going straight down the bebop scale, starting on the and of 1, which is kind of where I think it lays best. And I like this fingering too, which is having the first 3 notes on the first string. It doesn't kind of fit as neatly into these box patterns that we like, but it when you're articulating a phrase, and especially when you're doing somebody else's phrase, you have to kind of learn how to articulate it the best that pays respects to what they're playing. And I think that that does that, and it also is just a way that it lies on the guitar very nicely. So then, once we get to the root, then we go down to the 7th again. So that's almost like he's telling you that he's going doing a 2-5 to the 4. So like an F minor to B flat to the 4, which is E flat. And he's doing that by not necessarily playing an arpeggio, but very close to arpeggio. So arpeggio might be, so that would be kind of like an A flat major 7 arpeggio, or an F minor 11 arpeggio. It's almost that, but we're adding a B flat in there, so it's 1 note different. So, but very similar concept. Then we get to the 5th bar, so we're playing the E flat 7, and then we're kind of just doing now blues in E flat. That's just a very classic blues. I mean, there's some major notes in there, so it's not like totally minor blues, but it's very, classic blues. Then what we're doing here is we're going to kind of like a B flat major 7, because if you notice we're playing the A natural here, right? So we're kind of changing the tonality. So we're going kind of straight down the B flat. It's almost like a B flat major bebop scale. We haven't really talked about this, but a B flat major bebop scale would be like. So that means the chromatic note would be in between the 5th and the 6th. So, similarly going up up an octave would be. So he's kind of going down that scale. And then we're running straight into the 3rd of G7, which I've talked about this a lot. And then that's like a straight up G7 flat 9 arpeggio, or like, even a diminished. And then adding the G at the end. This part is like a little bit hip. I wouldn't say it's the next part that I'm going to talk about is not like Bebop 101. It's a little maybe more advanced, but it's pretty cool. So he's using kind of this pattern that's like the 1, 2, and 5 of the C minor chord. So be. Obviously not something that lays very well on the guitar. Anyways, we're going the 9th root, 5th, and then back down to the 9th and the root. And then we just do that down a half step for the F7, but it's really like a tritone sub. So, and since he's not playing the 3rd of each chord, right? It's just 1, 2, 5. You can kind of get away with just playing the exact same thing in C and then in B. You could also make both of them dominant, but he's not really doing that here because there's no 3rd. It's just 1, 2, and 5. And then, so we're kind of just going down the B flat major scale, maybe even the B flat major bebop scale. We're just adding some chromatics so that it like lays a little bit better within the beats. And then, so this is kind of like in the 11th and 12th bar. So we have like a 3, like a 1, 6, 2, 5. And so then in the 12th bar, we have like, we're landing on the E flat, which is the 3rd of C minor. And then we're kind of doing an arpeggio. And then, okay, and that gets us to the top of our second chorus. Okay, second chorus. We're starting on a very different foot here. So we're just getting real bluesy, and it's just going to stay bluesy for a while. So we got just, you guys know the blues. If you're guitar players, I'm just going to make that assumption. But, when I got into jazz, you kind of make these assumptions that there's like, oh, jazz is so much different from blues, and it's like, it's its own thing. But there's a lot, let us not forget that there's a lot of blues in jazz, and that jazz comes from blues. So this whole album is a reminder, but if not the whole album, just this, part of the solo. And then we kind of repeat this motif, but slightly alter it. Okay, very cool. Then we have this very cool sort of arpeggiated lick on the 4 chord on the E flat 7. So it's kind of like it's definitely an arpeggio here. So it's leaving out the root. It's like a E flat 9 arpeggio, but leaving out the root. And then back to the 3rd. And then up to the 13, which is very cool. I actually like to play, which comes straight from Charlie Christian. I've talked about that before, but we're starting on a different beat, so that kind of gets us to where we need to go. And then we go. This little cell of here, this little clump of cells. These three notes we call like a three note combination a cell. So that's a very cool. It's all fourths except for like this one is a tritone, so like a sharp 4. And it also kind of gets us to like a bluesy place because you're landing on that, 7th of E flat, which is the minor third, which is the kind of one of the main blues notes in this equation. Okay, and then we go back to just the straight up blues. So this is kind of like a little bit of a statement on motivic development, right? So Hank Mobley is maybe not like the king of that in the way that maybe somebody like Sonny Rollins or later like a Branford Marsalis is, but there's still a lot of motivic development in pretty much any great jazz player. So we're going back to that theme, but varying it, which is also key because you don't want to beat somebody over the head with a riff. It's one of my mentors, Bruce Foreman. I can't remember the context, but I said he said yeah, you want to develop a motif, not beat somebody over the head with it, which kind of stuck with me. So yeah, I mean, we've all seen instances where people are beating you over the head with a motif. So we don't want to quite go there, but to take a statement and then play it again, but vary it up in different ways, that's kind of the roadmap from the masters, I would say. That's what Hank's doing here. Okay, so here we have kind of like a pretty advanced thing. It gets a little funky. So first on the C minor chord, we got, which is pretty much straight up the C minor scale. It's a little funky on the guitar, but we're starting from the sharp 7. And then once we get to the root, that's straight up the C minor scale, and then back down to the root. And then we have this really weird thing. We got, it's kind of somewhere in between, like going up a half step. It sounds like he's going up a half step in a way. So it's like a D flat minor 7, but I think it's kind of something approximating a tritone sub. If you kind of look at the notes, it's a little hard to figure out what's actually going on here. I'm not going to dwell on it too much, but it almost sounds like he's going up to that like D flat minor, which is not like a typical thing you would do, but it kind of just like somehow works. Great players have a way of like making things that sometimes don't really work well on paper just sound great. So I'm not going to prophesize too much about this one. Then, so we'll move on to the next lick. This is the last lick, and it's kind of this like. So that's kind of like a very common like yakety yak like tenor saxophone lick. It doesn't lay great on the guitar, but you're kind of going up this theme, right? Or like, but we're doing it in a kind of funky way. I figured out my own way to articulate it on the guitar. It's not perfect, but I go. I go. You get the idea. And then we're back to the blues. So that's kind of my little dissection of these first 2 bars. There's a lot there. I would say you could kind of like, if you were stranded on a desert island and you only had these 2 choruses to work with in the solo, you could develop a lot of knowledge and develop a lot of vocabulary within this style just from these 2 choruses. So don't sell them short. It's about quality, not quantity. Anyways, as always, this is written out in PDF format on the Patreon. So definitely check that out. if you are so inclined. Otherwise, yeah, thanks guys for tuning in to another Teaching Tuesday. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share it with your friends, your enemies, your foes, your people you're kind of lukewarm about, all that jazz. But yeah, otherwise, I'll see you guys next Tuesday.